Good morning and welcome to the Workforce Observer. We are pleased to have with us Abhi Bhattacharya. He is a technologist and a world of work veteran. An entrepreneur, Abhi Bhattacharya is a passionate advocate for the future of work with deep experience going 0 to 1 and beyond in marketplaces, enterprise software, health tech, and AI. Welcome, Abhi. We're really pleased to have you.
Thank you,
And I'm
Suladra.
going to dive right in with the questions. So tell me, what is happening with AI in the world of work? Many people are talking about AI revolutionizing the space. Others are saying it's going to sound the death knell for recruiters and the industry. But what is actually going on? It's really hard to understand that. And I think from your perch, it would be helpful just to know.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I've been a great admirer, longtime listener, first time caller, as it were, on your show. So thank you for having me. People have been talking about recruiting going out of business for literally like hundreds of years, right? And we're still here, like recruiting and staffing is still here. But here's the reality. The reality is that the AI revolution in staffing, it isn't coming. It's already here, right? Data shows that more than 3/4 of staffing firms are already using some form of AI. We always forget AI is not new. AI has been around for decades already. It started with applied AI. Now people talk about generative AI. That's like the new big thing. But AI has been around for a very, very long time. So, most staffing firms and organizations are already using AI. Over half of them are planning to deploy new AI-driven solutions the next year. So the question really isn't like, when is it going to revolutionize the industry? When is it coming? It isn't whether to adopt AI. It's just how quickly can you integrate this into your business, into your organization to stay competitive. So
That's great.
that's what I'm saying.
That's great. But let me ask you this. When you say staffing firms are already adopting AI, how? Give me 2 examples. How are they doing this? And leading to that, where if there's innovation, where is the innovation focused on? And I'm not talking about just general. Like if you had to give me specifics, what would you tell me?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the most interesting things that's happening right now is you have AI hitting all parts of the life cycle. So it's not just kind of hitting, sourcing and screening, right? It's hitting onboarding, it's hitting engagement management and retention, redeployment, like the entire life cycle of an engagement, right? So, and if you think about like in healthcare, where I spend a lot of my time,
Right.
access to the right clinician at the right time is still the biggest problem in healthcare. It is the biggest outcome indicator of a poor patient outcome or a positive patient outcome. So that includes like, how do I find these folks, right? How do I go out and get the right type of clinician? How do I validate that their credentials are accurate? How do I get them matched with the right position? And generative AI has allowed us for the first time to actually do these in a very human-like manner, right? Before, if you kind of look at pre-generative AI solutions, which a lot of them are out there in the market today, they're very automated and they're very bot-driven, right? If you kind of give it the wrong response, it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't get that. Everyone's
Get
had that
that.
experience with like
Right.
Alexa or Siri or what have you, right?
Right.
Generative AI can have a very human conversation. So from a sourcing perspective, it can have a very human conversation with that candidate, just
Right.
like your recruiters are, right? So
Right.
it's very, very predominant now in sourcing and screening. It takes up, sourcing takes up as much as a half of a recruiter's time each week, if not more, right? So
Right.
just by kind of using generative AI in those use cases, you can really kind of free up those recruiters to focus on what they do best, which is like closing top talent fast, building those relationships that only a human can really do, right? So
Right. Right.
that's what I'm seeing.
Okay. And in terms of tools, do you use anything which you are like, oh my gosh, this is fantastic for me? And I'm talking to you as a staffing person, not as a
Yeah,
technologist, because
yeah,
there is AI and then there's the industry. So do you use
right.
anything which you will be like, okay? And, if you don't want to name names because it's fine, but if you
Oh
want to,
yeah,
go for
no,
it because it'll be useful to the
yeah,
audience to know, like, okay, look at this, especially healthcare, because that's where I know that you are,
totally.
mostly engaged with. So,
100%. Yeah. I think, as you kind of look at the landscape of tools, this is one thing that is very difficult. A lot of tools nowadays are doing what a client of mine calls AI washing, right? They're kind of taking a tool that's really actually not driven by AI, and they're just kind of drenching it in AI and trying to say it's powered by AI, but it's not really. So,
Right.
but also, fun fact about me: before I was a technologist and kind of working on building products and that sort of thing,
Yeah.
I started my career in staffing as a technical recruiter. So I actually smiled and dialed, and I had a
Oh,
quota. So that it was going back 20 years, dating me a little bit, but that my job was to do this work. So nowadays, as a business owner and as a leader, I'm doing that myself. I'm also helping organizations do this. So from that perspective, I use obviously the foundational models like that OpenAI has, ChatGPT, Claude. I use that a lot when I'm thinking about sourcing. So if I have a LinkedIn candidate that I want to do outreach with, right? I use those models to feed that LinkedIn profile to them. And I'm like, hey, I want to go ahead and send an outreach message to this candidate, and I want to see if they'll be a good fit for this job. I can, in plain language, just talk to ChatGPT about that problem, and it'll generate copy for me that's hyper personalized for that candidate. Whereas before, right, I used to have to read the profile myself. I have to see, oh, they went to this school, they worked at this company. Let me personalize my copy this way. It would probably take me, at least 5-10 minutes to try to figure that out. Nowadays, I can go onto that platform and do it. And you can do it at scale using tools like copy.ai, right, which automates these kind of marketing-ish workflows, these outreach workflows at scale. One
yeah.
of the other favorite tools that I have is one of the custom GPTs on ChatGPT. You can go out and do this for free right now. It's called
Yeah.
VGPT. You can feed it, and some health systems are actually doing this right now, where one of the biggest problems they have right now is reaching Gen Z, Generation Alpha type folks, like getting them kind of interested, right? And their main channels are social, right? TikTok,
Right.
Insta, that sort of thing.
Right. Right.
So the incumbent model has been hiring a bunch of people to kind of create posts and engagement, and you're paying these agencies to build like video job descriptions and that sort of thing. With
Right.
VGPT, I can give it a link to the job description for, let's say, a staff nurse in an IC unit
Okay.
at a health facility. I can give it a link to that job description in Indeed, and I can tell
Okay.
it, create a 20-second TikTok video job description for this job. And it'll actually spit out something that brings in stock image footage from that particular health facility. It'll spit out the voiceover. It'll actually do the subtitles for you, right? It'll create a video that's about 80% there. It's not ready to post, but it's about
Yeah.
80% there. That
Right.
would have taken me at least a few days and probably several $1,000s to get to. I'd have to hire a voiceover artist, go on Upwork and find someone to build a video, right?
Right.
So organizations are using these tools now, the smart ones, right, are using these tools now to find massive time and cost savings in the sourcing and screening parts of the life cycle like never before. So those are just some of the tools that I use on an everyday basis.
That's cool. That's cool. It's good for people to know that.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, especially in healthcare, but just across even the professional services segment, you are, what's the impact on the end user and also on the talent, right? Because you're using this to get them to, go there. So what are you seeing? What's the impact on operations for the industry, on the
Mm-hmm.
talent, on the buyers? I mean, there's so much churn, I think, going on.
There is, and the industry, especially in healthcare, is there's some tough times right now, right? The demand has kind of plateaued post COVID, right? Healthcare staffing
Yep.
companies and
Yep.
healthcare organizations in general are kind of struggling to do more with less, right? So in our industry, speed is everything, right? We talk a lot about like speed to lead, like if you talk about staffing businesses or talent acquisition organizations, they talk a lot about time to fill and the cost to fill, but
Yep.
if you talk to recruiters, read some study recently, like over 72% of them say that there's a lack of automation in their organization, and it leads to a
Okay.
really slow recruiting process. They don't
Right.
really feel like they can respond to those leads quickly, right? So it's
Right.
not just an inconvenience; it's a massive like opportunity cost, right? It takes 87 days, for example, to fill an RN position at a health facility. Isn't that crazy? And each open position
Wow.
costs a facility $56,000. So
Wow.
that position remaining unfilled isn't just a day of lost productivity and revenue, it's lost lives in healthcare, right? That's
Right.
patient care
Right.
that's suffering.
That's
So
being, yeah, that's right. Right.
for recruiters, what AI has the potential to do is what I call like being an Iron Man suit. Or Iron Woman suit or Iron They suit, right? AI reduces that time that's spent on those repetitive tasks, enables them to kind of manage larger pools faster and better and more efficiently. For organizations, health systems, and AI is going to improve that quality and speed of hiring by providing some more insights into what you're doing. So today, like if you have a recruiting team, right, to kind of get insights on what's working and what's not working, requires a lot of work, right? You really have to listen to people's calls. You have to kind of
Yes.
transcribe them and try to
Yeah.
data mine, right? With AI,
Right.
you can have a model that's learning, right? As it's going
Right.
along, like, you know what, this talk track worked better than this other one. It's just like a human that learns, right? I'm going to start using this talk track instead of that, right? You don't have to
Right.
go in and configure like a configuration panel to be like, all right, now you got to change what the bot is saying. No, like, this
Yeah.
is now happening in real time. That's a big difference. I would actually encourage your audience to ask that question if you're looking at an automation tool or an AI tool, like, is it self-learning? Right? Or is it only as powerful as how you're configuring that product? And that's been the status quo that is now being disrupted. Is now these tools are in real time getting smarter based on what's happening in the tool itself, right? So
So
healthcare
they,
recruiters. Oh, sorry. Yeah,
sorry, no. So I mean, I'm just going back to what you said. So you're saying they're getting smarter, and we don't have to do anything. So this is like them machine learning. What you're
that's
referring
right.
to?
It's machine learning, right? So we're now seeing it kind of mainstream, right? So generative AI and machine learning has been around for decades, right?
But
But
I have a daughter who's a machine learning engineer, a 23-year-old. But I thought you had to feed the machine. You got
uh-huh.
to do stuff so that the machine learns.
That's right.
Sorry, I'm not. I
Absolutely.
don't know if I'm sounding a bit
Absolutely.
crazy,
So,
but so.
a machine, in order for it to learn, needs data, right? Data is kind of the lifeblood of these
Mm,
models. So, when you introduce one of these agents, right? And that's the big kind of
right.
buzzword right now is
Yes. Right.
agents.
Right.
When you
Right.
introduce one of these agents into your digital talent supply chain, it is
Right.
learning from not just the data that's sitting in your CRM, in your applicant tracking system. It's learning from
Right.
the conversations that it's having with people, with candidates, right?
Right.
And then it's updating that model as it goes along in real time. Whereas a bot, which is like the majority, like I'm not going to name names, but like the main kind of industry incumbents today that do this type of automation on email and text and
Sure.
whatnot, they
Sure.
don't run off a machine learning model. They run off of a script, right? So it is based
Ah.
on
Okay. I
how
got it now.
well they have
Okay.
configured that back end and said, okay, if the person says X, say Y. If they say Y, say Z. And you have to configure it. And it's only as smart as the person configuring the tool in the back end, creates a human maintenance loop, right? You have to kind of,
Right.
you have to
Right.
maintain it. So the difference between that and an agentic model, an AI agent, is that if you say something to me like, hey, what is your favorite color? And you keep asking me that question as a candidate, and I keep hearing that over and over again, I, as the agent, will learn that that's a key thing that candidates care about. And I should really figure out what my favorite color is. And so it'll actually start responding to that question, right? And it'll change the way it kind of like interacts with candidates. And that's a big departure from where we are today with automation in terms of the incumbent tools. The incumbent tools are not using generative AI under the surface. They're still using a very scripted procedural model that very easy to break. Next time you talk to one of those, just ask it its favorite color. You'll watch it die, right? It'll be like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you. But a human, right, would answer that question and use it as an opportunity to form a relationship. And that's exactly what AI agents do. With machine learning, it'll actually be like, my favorite color is blue. What's your favorite color, right? And you can ask the
Right.
agent its favorite food. It'll actually engage with you in that conversation. That's the step
Right.
change that we're seeing.
Got
So
it, got it, got it.
yeah.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So I know you've talked a little about it, but where do you see the opportunity? If you had to, name like where, obviously not a tool, but what is the, like, where is like now? I mean, given everything that's going on, the pace at which AI is moving and where
Hmm.
the industry is at, what is the, I don't like to say immediate opportunity, but maybe short-term opportunity and the long-term opportunity?
Yeah.
I'll give you a few minutes to think. I know that it's not simple.
I I think that we're living in like a magical moment, right? I think Steve Jobs said a long time ago when the PC was becoming a big deal back in like the late 70s, early 80s, he would compare personal computers as the bicycle of the mind, right? He would say that
Very
it
good.
is we're tool builders, right? So, because we build tools, we're able to go faster, longer, farther than animals, right? Other animals. A lot of people are saying that AI is like the flying car of the mind, right? It is the value that you see, the time to value you see with AI is as immediate as you saw with the PC, with the gig economy, with the smartphones, right? Like these different waves, cloud computing, mobile, gig economy, like we saw these kind of time to value just shrink, like, and that's how you can tell you're in a magical moment. And we're in one of those magical moments in computing where that
Right.
time to value is like instant. So I think short term, where there's an opportunity for staffing companies and for organizations is how do you use AI to kind of create more personalized conversations and messaging, right? How can you really kind of meet your customers and your candidates where they are using generative AI? How can you focus your recruiters and your team on the work that truly matters the most, right? Where they're not having to do these kind of repetitive tasks, right? One of the things that I used to do every single day as a recruiter, I would go into my CRM and I had run this search of who I haven't talked to in more than 30 days, right? And I would go and start making phone calls and I would start sending emails to those people to see how I could reactivate them. There are still too many recruiters doing that task today alone, right? They don't have an assistant or an agent helping them do that. And there's no reason why they need to do that alone. We should be seeing, if we're successful, right, with AI, we should be seeing recruiters moving from a pull mindset where they have to, be smart enough to run the right queries in the CRM,
Right.
right? Or
Right.
run the
Right.
right queries in our ATS to a push model where an agent is going out there doing this work on behalf of the organization and it's pushing like the warm leads right to that
Right.
recruiter and they've already
Right.
qualified, they're already interested, they're already
Right.
verified. So I think short term that's what you see. I think longer term there's an opportunity to kind of integrate AI with more like human decision making type stuff that like only humans can do today. Is there a way that we could augment those big decisions that need to be made? Like, where do I open a new location? Right? How can I
Definitely.
use AI to kind of to do that? I think some of the longer term things, or even short term things, if you look at the AI safety bill that was just passed in California, how do we fill gaps in AI ethics? How do we prevent bias in hiring? Right? These algorithms and these models will have bias present in them. Right? How do we safeguard underrepresented folks from that bias? And I think there's a
Right.
need for kind of better, I would say, like AI explainability. Right? Like instead of it being like a black box, like how can
Right.
we understand how AI makes those decisions? So there's startups out there that are working on this, AI validation lab, Ember Path. There's a few of these that are kind of working on these bigger problems. And they're starting to kind of see some traction. And I think that's going to only increase.
Wonderful. A recent, I think it was a Mercer labor market report indicated that the US will be, I think, short almost 100,000 healthcare workers in a few years. How do you see AI addressing shortages so patient care is not impacted? Because I know we've already talked about some of the stuff, what AI can do, and there's a very real need and a very real shortage. So especially, we don't want patient care to suffer. So what do you see anything
Absolutely.
like? a magic, like a magic bullet maybe that AI can bring and say, okay,
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's not just a staffing problem, right? This is a public health crisis, right?
right,
We
right,
are in the midst of a public health crisis that was amplified by COVID, but has actually been going on for quite some time. COVID just kind of
right,
amplified the problem. So
right,
I think AI can play a critical role in addressing that shortage. So if you look at some of the metrics I shared earlier, like where it takes
right.
nearly 3 months to fill an RN position, and we keep those open. On average, those same facilities that are taking 90 plus days to fill those RN positions, they have at least 25,000 candidates that are sitting in their applicant tracking system or their CRMs. They're just not activated. They're not engaged. They're not
Mm,
nursed, right? So how AI I think can help here, and I don't know if it's a silver bullet, but it might be close, maybe a carbon bullet or something, is
right,
that AI can help identify and engage those passive candidates. How do you kind of do
right,
that on an autopilot basis versus today? It's very reactive. Oh, I just got this new job order. I just got this new need in this facility. I need to
right,
now pick up the phone and start sourcing. How could you run AI agents as an autopilot to kind of always keep your databases warm, right? And keep pushing those engaged, nurtured leads to your recruiters on a continuous
right.
basis, right? Not waiting until the needs arrive, but just keeping those pools warm. We've talked about this for decades in staffing with talent pools and all that
Right.
kind of stuff,
Yeah,
right?
right, right.
Now, suddenly, in this moment, we have the technology to do it. How can we help AI identify that top talent faster? Well, who are the high potential candidates in that database that could fill a gig or fill a position sooner rather than later? Are there propensity models that we could build on like behavioral signals that tell us that Obi is more likely to take this role than Subhadra, right?
Right, right,
Um,
right, right.
how can
Sure.
we help with forecasting? I think the other thing with
Yeah,
the public health crisis is there's signals out there. I mean, obviously we couldn't have predicted COVID like many, many months in advance, but there are signals out there in acuity and census and public health data, demographics that we can start using it as demand signals. And you see
right.
Trusted Health doing this with their product
Yep.
Works, right? They're doing that at the facility level, but we were doing that during the pandemic. I think also thinking about, what, you already have nurses today that are sitting in your hospitals, right? How can you do a better job of matching them, right, with open shifts? Today, that a lot of that's done manually. You have nurse managers that are allocating people to shifts by begging and pleading over text message or what have you,
Right,
and that's not very 21st century,
right,
right? So,
right,
so
right.
I think AI can help with all of those use cases. You already have companies that are doing this, organizations that are doing this today.
That's
I think
great.
it's just a matter of like tapping into those insights and and
That's right.
and and working on it.
Well, I'm learning a lot, so let's talk about education, right? It's a very fast-paced world, People in this industry, they haven't been really following AI to the extent where they can go in, say, this is what I need to know, this is what I need to do, and this is where I can go to get the knowledge. So how do they keep abreast of developments? What can they do to educate themselves and at the same time, I'm hoping the podcast fills some gaps, but obviously this is, a continually learning process, you know.
Yeah.
So what do they do?
I think education starts with overcoming complacency. Complacency is the enemy of progress, right? So I think that in our industry, we have had some
Right,
very antiquated, mechanisms that have just survived decades and decades, right? We have functions and elements of that talent supply chain that haven't really changed, right, over the decades that have been around. Even if you look at the waves that have hit on the consumer side, if you think about cloud computing, you think about mobile, consumerized
right.
software, you think about social, you think about gig economy, we've been slow to adopt as an industry any of
Yes,
those changes,
fair
and
enough.
even
Fair enough.
yeah.
Yeah.
So VMS is I'm looking at you, right? So so
Yep.
I think it's challenging, right? So I think it starts with that first is a mindset shift. how can I be open to taking a student-based mindset to adopting this new technology into my business and putting aside the fear and the complacency of, am I going to be replaced?
Yeah.
Does this even matter? Maybe this is a fad. I can just ignore it. And be open. Take a student, a beginner's mindset to it, right? And the
Right.
biggest thing I can tell you to do is start playing. Play with the tools that are out there. Follow the key like AI thought leaders. I'm going to share a couple here. Hopefully, you can include those in maybe the podcast notes that I
Sure.
follow personally. These kind of just up my own game with AI. It's stuff that I follow every day. And attend those conferences, those webinars, join some groups that are focused in AI. There's so many groups right now that are emerging that are creating kind of communities around like, how do we
Right.
use AI in HR and recruiting? Um,
Right.
and the best thing to do is start a roadmap internally, right? Of, okay, where do we want to place some bets? Like what parts of the candidate lifecycle or our client lifecycle could we experiment with AI and take a data-driven approach to it? Where do we spend a lot of human capital or what causes a lot of friction for our customers today and work backwards from that, right?
Okay.
A lot of times I tell folks when I'm advising organizations on this, it comes from my Amazon days, is write the press release, right? Write the press release of how AI could transform your staffing business and then work backwards from that North Star vision, right? So don't get so caught up in the solution at first, get caught up on the outcomes, the things that you're actually wanting to do for your customers and work backwards from that.
That's a
You
really
can,
cool. That's a really
yeah,
cool piece of advice. It
yeah.
is. Sorry. Yeah. That is cool. But everything you're telling me actually goes back to, I mean, depending on the size of your firm, to the executive team on the C-suite. It has to come from the top, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. I think, and the thing that's very interesting is, I think if you don't start from the top, your people will pull you towards it, right? We saw this
Right.
in cloud computing. We saw this with the gig economy. We saw this when job boards became digitized, right?
Right.
LinkedIn, when that started becoming a thing, right? I still remember we had rules at the staffing company that I worked at. Like they were like, don't use LinkedIn. Don't put any data in there. You must only use, the approved job boards, right? And we used it because guess what? It added value to our candidates. It added value to our clients. So we used it anyway. So if you don't get on top of it, CEOs, right? If you are not paying attention to this and you don't have a roadmap for how you're going to implement AI, your people will do it for you. And then it'll be kind of a rogue effort, right? Or
Right.
somebody else will do it better than you and you won't have to worry about it because you won't be a CEO anymore. So that's also an outcome here, right?
Brutal, yes, but yes, like if you, from your perch, had to imagine an AI-driven landscape, not even too far down the road, say next year, what jobs will what will it look like, and what jobs will the industry be staffing? I mean, you don't have to dive too deep, but just I'd be curious because you know so much.
Yeah. No, that's a very interesting question. I think I really still believe, and I think there's strong indicators of this. Whenever these magical moments happen, people always, I think, pit the technology against the human, right? And I don't believe the future of work is about the humans versus AI. It's about humans and AI working together seamlessly. It's about amplifying human potential using AI. So I think as leaders in this industry, it's our responsibility to shape that future, right? To kind of create more opportunities for people to foster kind of greater job satisfaction, and ultimately in healthcare, like improve patient care or whatever industry you're in, right? Like,
Right,
focus on that. So if we
right,
work backwards from that, if those are the outcomes, when I think about healthcare and I think about whether it's a clinician or a recruiter, how do you reduce burnout, right? I think there's going to be
very important.
AI roles that you're going to be able to hire to do those types of jobs, right? If it's from a
Right,
recruiting perspective, I need some help with sourcing, right? I'll be able to hire an AI agent just like I can go on Upwork today and hire a human to do that. I might be able to hire an AI agent myself to help augment what I'm doing, right? As
right,
a recruiter or a sourcer, I might be able to kind of hire AI workers at a level
right.
to kind of augment what I'm doing, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
same thing,
yeah.
I think on the clinician side, like you're going to see a lot of folks like hire AI agents for other types of jobs. Like, hey, I have a burnout issue. You might you see this in the mental health space where there are now agents that are helping with just counseling and therapy in between appointments. Right? I can chat with an AI agent about some of the challenges that I'm having and the emotions I'm feeling. Right? So these are some of the new jobs I think that are going to pop up. The new jobs for humans, in order to enable that future, is going to be a lot more prompt engineers, fine tuning models. So you're going to have folks that are trained in a specific vertical, have subject matter expertise, let's say around staffing or healthcare, what have you. That will be continuously kind of training these models with data, right? Because the models are only as smart as you said, and your daughter knows, right? Only as smart as the data that they have to feed on, right? So how do you engineer the right prompts? How do you teach the AI the right kinds of data points to act on? There's going to be a lot of work that's associated with that. I think there's a big opportunity right now, and I'm not seeing anybody really doing a good job of this, just helping companies navigate off-the-shelf AI tools. A lot of your questions that
Yeah.
you asked were like,
Yeah.
you know what?
Yep.
What AI tools are you just using day to day?
Yeah.
Can you
Yeah.
help my
Yeah.
audience go 0 to 1 on those tools? It's not
Yeah.
even anything that you're writing code for, just
Yeah.
helping people navigate that change. Like, you know what? Show me
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
job
How
description
to
thing you
do
just
this?
said.
What does this mean? And
Yes,
how do I do it so
exactly.
I get the results exactly? Yeah. No, it makes
Yeah.
sense. It makes
So,
that's very
yeah.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, and any advice or takeaways for the industry? Do you want to leave them with something? I mean, you've given us a lot of good information, I think, but any last, like, hey, do this
Yeah.
or don't do this?
Absolutely. I think just to double down, I think embrace AI as an opportunity, not a threat, right? I think that's number one. See it as an opportunity. Focus on kind of developing those like human skills that are going to complement the AI. So think about
Yep.
the things in your organization that are the highest value tasks, right? That you want your recruiters and your team kind of focused on, and figure
Yeah.
out how AI can be that Iron Man suit for them, right? And kind of help those humans focus on what matters most. Invest in data, invest in tech infrastructure. If you don't have a roadmap, like a technology roadmap that gets you to the outcomes that you want, invest in that.
Right.
Bring in expertise. Drink your own champagne as an industry, right? We have
Right.
fractional experts available on Upwork, on TopTal, and all these platforms. Hire somebody for a few weeks to help you build a roadmap around this. Somebody who's been there and done that, right? And I think
Excellent idea.
yeah, and I think above all, invest in AI literacy for your staff. There are so many courses on Udemy, Udacity, all these different LinkedIn Learning. There's a few that I could provide in the podcast notes that I've done
Okay.
that just are like a nice 101 to AI for your staff, and you can figure out pretty quickly how to apply those to recruiting, right? And those tools, those skill sets are going to be as critical as like the SQL courses that you're teaching your recruiters on how to query your applicant tracking system, right? Like back in the day, right? Doing those Boolean functions and all that stuff, right? This is as critical as a skill as that is, right? Prompting and doing good prompts, right? There's a whole science behind that now that's actually really accessible. It's not as technical as like writing Boolean SQL queries. It's very, very accessible. So I think training your team on literacy, you need to have an education roadmap along with a technology roadmap, right? So, and just stay adaptive. The industry is going to evolve. It's not going to go anywhere. This industry will only continue to evolve, but you will need to keep up with these investments, just like you had to keep up with web, you had to keep up with the gig economy, just like you had to keep up with mobile, right? You are going to
Yeah.
have to keep up with this, or it will consume you, right? That's how the world works. But
That is
yeah,
how the world works. Thank you. Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you so much. I love the insights. It was wonderful talking to you. For those of you who want to learn more, the links will be in the description. Thank you and have a great morning.
Thank you, Subhadra. Appreciate you.